If you were to ask me which great character from history's life I'd want to live, Ibn Batuta, the legendary Moroccan explorer from the 13th century, tops my list. His life was one of the most adventurous. But why? By the end of this journey that I'll take you on, you're going to understand. Join me as I unravel the tale of Ibn Battuta's extraordinary travels in this series. We'll delve into the lives of remarkable individuals who faced challenges but lived lives worth admiring. On 24th February 1304, in the bustling Mediterranean port town of Tangier, North Morocco, Ibn Batuta entered the world. His family, Berber by origin, provided him with a sturdy foundation in the customs and traditions of their land. Little did they know their son would go down in history as one of the most legendary traveler and explorer. Growing up in Tangier, Ibn Batuta received his education at a madrasa, where he immersed himself in the teachings of the Quran and Hadith. His father, a respected Qadi, Islamic judge, instilled in him a strong sense of religious devotion and intellectual curiosity. At the age of 21, Ibn Batuta embarked on a pilgrimage to Mecca, bidding farewell to his family with a mix of excitement and apprehension. His journey was supposed to last 16 months, but Ibn Battuta's thirst for adventure led him down a path of discovery that would span over 2 decades. Traveling overland, Ibn Batuta made his way through North Africa, encountering diverse cultures and landscapes along the way. He journeyed through North African countries like Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt, joining caravans for safety as he crossed vast deserts and rugged terrain. In Mecca, Ibn Batuta found himself immersed in the spiritual aura of the holy city, surrounded by pilgrims from all corners of the Islamic world. It was here that he received a divine revelation, as 2 ascetic pious men foretold his destiny as a world traveler. Leaving Mecca behind, Ibn Batuta embarked on a series of detours, exploring the vibrant cities and landscapes of the Middle East. He journeyed to Cairo, the bustling capital of the Mamluk Sultanate, before setting his sights on Damascus. Undeterred by the challenges of his journey, Ibn Batuta set out across the Arabian Peninsula, traversing vast deserts and rugged terrain in search of adventure and enlightenment. He joined a caravan of pilgrims bound for Iraq, braving the harsh conditions of the desert as they made their way towards Medina. Leaving behind the Arabian Peninsula, Ibn Batuta embarked on a 6-month detour into the heart of Persia, where he encountered a rich tapestry of cultures and civilizations. From the ancient city of Isfahan to the bustling markets of Shiraz, he journeyed across Persia's Arabian landscape, captivated by the beauty and diversity of the land. Leaving Persia behind, Ibn Batuta set his sights on Baghdad, the legendary city that had once been the center of the Islamic world. Along the way, he encountered ancient ruins of bustling bazaars and diverse cultures, each leaving its mark on his journey. After years of wandering, Ibn Batuta found himself drawn once again to the sacred city of Mecca, where he completed his pilgrimage and took on the honorific title of Al-Hajj. But instead of returning home, he made the fateful decision to continue his travels, setting his sights on the distant lands of the Ilkhanate to the northeast. But what adventures awaited Ibn Batuta in the lands of the Ilkhanate, and what challenges would he face as he continued his quest for knowledge and enlightenment? As Ibn Battuta's journey unfolds, we are left with a sense of awe and wonder at the remarkable adventures of this legendary explorer. From the bustling streets of Tangier to the ancient cities of Persia, his travels have taken him to the furthest reaches of the known world. leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire adventurers and seekers of truth to this day. Join us as we continue to follow in the footsteps of Ibn Battuta, exploring the world through his eyes and experiencing the wonders of his extraordinary journey. We'll delve into his adventures in Somalia, Anatolia, and South and Southeast Asia. So stay tuned for more thrilling tales of exploration and discovery. I'm your host, Raafey Akram. From Aden, Ibn Battuta set sail for Zila on Somalia's coast. He then journeyed to Cape Guardafui, spending about a week in each place before reaching Mogadishu, the leading city of the land of the Berbers. Upon his arrival in 1332, Mogadishu was at its peak. Ibn Battuta described it as an exceedingly large city with wealthy merchants and high-quality fabrics exported to places like Egypt. The city was ruled by Somali Sultan Abu Bakr ibn Sheikh Umar, who had a dark complexion, spoke Somali, and was fluent in Arabic. Ibn Battuta continued south along the Swahili coast, known as Belad az-Zanj in Arabic, making a brief stop in Mombasa. Though small at the time, Mombasa would later grow in importance. He then reached Kilwa in present-day Tanzania, a key hub for the gold trade. He admired Kilwa's beauty, noting its wooden buildings and reed-roofed houses. He returned to Arabia, visiting Oman and the Strait of Hormuz. He then went to Mecca for the Hajj of 1330. After his third pilgrimage, Ibn Battuta sought employment with the Sultan of Delhi, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. In autumn 1330, he traveled overland through Anatolia, crossing the Red Sea and eastern desert to reach the Nile Valley. Then he moved north to Cairo, crossing the Sinai Peninsula and traveled through Palestine to Latakia. A ship took him to Alanya in Turkey. His journey across Anatolia was complex, visiting Igirdir, Milas, Konya, Erzurum, and Birgi, though not in that order, according to historians. In Iznik, recently conquered by Orhan, the second Ottoman Sultan, Orhan had gone to war when Ibn Battuta arrived. He was hosted by Orhan's wife. Ibn Battuta described Orhan's wife as a pious and hospitable lady. He praised Orhan as a powerful and wealthy ruler who constantly inspected his fortresses and engaged in battles with his enemies. Ibn Battuta also visited Bursa, the Ottoman capital, describing it as a significant city with fine bazaars and gardens. In the Beylik of Aydin, he received his first slave as a gift and later purchased more in Ephesus, Izmir, and Balıkesir, showcasing his growing wealth and status. From Sinop, he traveled to the Crimean Peninsula, entering the Golden Horde realm. He visited Azov, Majar, and met with Uzbek Khan's court near Mount Beshtau. He returned to Bulgar, the northernmost point he reached, noting its short summer nights. After returning to the Khan's court and moving to Astrakhan, he reached an expedition to Constantinople, accompanying Princess Bayalun, daughter of the Byzantine emperor. In Constantinople, he met Emperor Andronikos III Palaiologos, visited Hagia Sophia, and conversed with an Orthodox priest about Jerusalem. After a month, he returned to Astrakhan, then traveled to Sarai al-Jadid to report his adventures to Sultan Uzbek Khan. He then journeyed past the Caspian and Aral seas to Bukhara and Samarkand, praising the latter as a grand city despite its ruined walls from the Mongol invasion. From there, he traveled south to Afghanistan and crossed the Hindu Kush mountains into India. Reaching the Indus River on September 12, 1333, he then proceeded to Delhi and met Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, known as the wealthiest man in the Muslim world, patronized scholars, Sufis, Qadis, Wazirs, and other officials to strengthen his rule. Due to his studies in Mecca, Ibn Battuta was appointed as a Qadi or judge by the Sultan. However, he struggled to enforce Islam outside the Sultan's court in Delhi due to the limited appeal of Islam in India. The exact route Ibn Batuta took into the Indian subcontinent is uncertain, but he was kidnapped and robbed by rebels on his journey. He may have entered via the Khyber Pass and Peshawar, or maybe further south. Crossing the Sutlej River near Pakpatan in modern-day Pakistan, he visited the shrine of Baba Farid before entering into Rajput territory. From the Rajput kingdom of Sarsati, he traveled to Hansi, describing it as a beautiful, well-constructed, and populous city. In Sindh, Ibn Batuta observed Indian rhinoceroses along the Indus River. The Sultan of Delhi was unpredictable, and Ibn Batuta alternated between a life of luxury as a trusted subordinate and periods of suspicion and treason accusations. He planned to leave for another Hajj but was prevented by the Sultan. By this point, he had been in India for almost 7 years now. In 1341, an opportunity arose when an embassy from the Yuan dynasty of China requested permission to rebuild a Himalayan Buddhist temple. Ibn Batuta was put in charge of the embassy. However, en route to the coast, his group was attacked by bandits. Separated from his companions, he was robbed and kidnapped but managed to reunite with his group within 10 days and continued to Kambat in Gujarat. From Kambat, he sailed to Calicut, now Kozhikode, where Ibn Batuta was a guest of the ruling Zamorin. While he visited a mosque, a storm caused one of their ships to sink and the other was later seized by a Sumatran king. Unable to return to Delhi, he stayed in southern India under the protection of Jamaluddin, ruler of the Nawayat Sultanate. After the Sultanate's overthrow, Ibn Batuta left India, intending to continue to China. First, he visited the Maldives Islands, where he worked as a judge for 9 months. Initially not planning to stay, he was persuaded with gifts and unable to leave by ship. He stayed. He became a chief judge, married into the royal family, and tried to enforce stricter Muslim laws, which led to tensions and power struggles. Eventually, he resigned from his position. In the Maldives, Ibn Batuta took 4 wives, reflecting a local custom that allowed temporary marriages for visiting men. He then traveled to Sri Lanka, visited Sripada and Tenavaram temple, and survived a shipwreck and a pirate attack. Returning to the Madurai kingdom in India, he stayed at the court of the Madurai Sultan before finally boarding a Chinese junk to continue his journey. He reached Chittagong in modern-day Bangladesh and traveled to Sylhet to meet the renowned Shah Jalal. During their meeting in 1345, Ibn Batuta noted Shah Jalal's ascetic lifestyle and the strength and bravery of his disciples. He observed that many sought guidance from Shah Jalal. After visiting Assam, Ibn Batuta resumed his original plan to travel to China. In 1345, Ibn Batuta traveled to the Samudra Pasai Sultanate, referred to as Al-Java in present-day Aceh, northern Sumatra. After a 40-day voyage from Sunur Kawan, he documented that the ruler, Sultan al-Malik al-Zahir Jamaluddin, was a devout Muslim who zealously performed his religious duties and frequently campaigned against the region's animists. Ibn Batuta noted that Sumatra was abundant in camphor, areca nut, cloves, and tin. The predominant madhab was that of Imam al-Shafi, whose practices were similar to those of the Mapila Muslims in coastal India. Samudra Pasai marked the eastern boundary of Darul Islam at the time, as no Muslim-ruled territories existed further east. After a 2-week stay in the walled town, the Sultan provided Ibn Batuta with supplies and a junk to continue his journey to China. Ibn Batuta's next destination was Mul Java, likely Majapahit Java, a Hindu empire spanning 2 months of travel and ruling over Kakula and Kamara. He stayed in the walled city of Kakula for 3 days, observing war junks, toll collection, and the use of elephants. Moving on, he reached Kelukari in Tavalisi, where he met the warrior princess Urduja. Despite being an idolater, Urduja could write Bismillah in Arabic calligraphy. The exact location of Kailakuri and Tavalisi are debated, with suggestions ranging from Champa, southern Vietnam, to the Philippines. Ibn Batuta eventually arrived in Quanzhou, Fujian province, China. In Quanzhou, under Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, Ibn Batuta noted that Muslims called the city Zaytun, in Arabic meaning olives, despite the absence of olives in the city. He praised the local artists, craftsmen, and the use of paper money, and noted the manufacture of large ships and diverse cuisine, including frogs, pigs, and dogs. Scholars, however, have pointed out errors in his descriptions, such as confusing the Yellow River with the Grand Canal. He observed that Muslims in Quanzhou lived in a separate quarter with their own mosques, bazaars, and hospitals. He also met influential Iranians and visited a Taoist monk. Ibn Batuta traveled along the Chinese coast to Guangzhou, where he stayed with wealthy merchants before moving to Fuzhou and Hangzhou. In Hangzhou, he was impressed by the city's beauty, large wooden ships, and a banquet hosted by the Yuan administrator. He described floating along the Grand Canal and visiting Beijing, where he referred to himself as an ambassador from the Delhi Sultanate, and noted the wooden palace of Khan Balik and processions in honor of the empress. He also heard about the rampart of Yajuj and Majuj, believing it to be the Great Wall of China, though he found no evidence of his existence. So according to Ibn Batuta, the Great Wall of China did not exist. Returning to Guangzhou in 1346, Ibn Batuta began his journey back to Morocco. He learned about the death of Abu Sa'id, the last ruler of the Ilkhanid dynasty, and the subsequent civil war. In 1348, he arrived in Damascus, intending to retrace his first Hajj route, and learned that his father had died 15 years earlier. The Black Death became a dominant theme as he traveled through Syria, Palestine, and Arabia this time. He observed the plague's devastating effects, with huge death tolls in Gaza and Cairo. After performing Hajj in Mecca, he decided to return to Morocco. On the way, he made a detour to Sardinia and returned to Tangier in 1349, only to discover that his mother had died a few months earlier. After returning to Tangier in 1349, Ibn Batuta embarked on a new journey to the Muslim-controlled territory of Al-Andalus on the Iberian Peninsula. This trip was partly motivated by a threat from King Alfonso IX of Castile and Leon to attack Gibraltar. In 1350, Ibn Batuta joined a group of Muslims traveling from Tangier to defend the port. However, by the time they arrived, Alfonso IX had died from the Black Death, and the threat of invasion had dissipated. Consequently, Ibn Batuta turned his journey into a sightseeing tour, eventually reaching Granada. There he was hosted by its Muslim ruler and admired the city's architecture and vibrant intellectual life. After his stay in Granada, Ibn Batuta decided to explore more of Morocco. During his travels, he visited Marrakech, which he found to be almost deserted due to the plague and the recent transfer of its capital to Fez. In the autumn of 1351, Ibn Batuta left Fez and journeyed to Sijil Masa on the northern edge of the Sahara Desert in present-day Morocco. After purchasing camels and staying for 4 months, he set out with a caravan in February 1352, crossing the desert to Tagaza, a center for salt mining. Ibn Batuta found the place unappealing due to its brackish water and swarms of flies. The caravan then proceeded to Tasaralha, where he prepared for the most challenging part of the desert journey. A scout was sent ahead to Ualota to arrange for water to be transported to meet the caravan. Upon reaching Ualata, which was part of the Mali Empire, Ibn Batuta continued southwest along a river he mistakenly believed to be the Nile, which was actually the river over Niger until he reached the Mali Empire's capital. In the capital, he met Mansa Suleiman, who had ruled since 1341. Ibn Batuta was critical of the customs, especially the public exposure of women, which he deemed inappropriate for Muslims. He noted the Malian people's ill manners and their apparent disdain for white men, describing them as having feeble intellect. From the capital, Ibn Batuta traveled over land by camel to Timbuktu, which was relatively unimportant at the time compared to its future prominence. He then continued to Gao, an unimportant commercial center where he spent a month before joining a large caravan bound for the oasis of Takeda. Upon receiving a message from the Sultan of Morocco commanding his return, Ibn Batuta traveled back to Sijil Masa and eventually reached Morocco in 1354. Upon his return, Ibn Batuta was asked by the Marinid ruler Abu Inan Faris to recount tales of his journey. He dictated his travelogue to the scholar Ibn Juzay, who compiled it into a manuscript, a masterpiece to those who contemplate the wonders of cities and marvels of traveling, commonly known as the Travels or Rehla in Arabic. This work provides invaluable insights into the diverse cultures and lands Ibn Batuta visited during his extensive travels across the Islamic world and beyond. To this day, we remember Ibn Batuta as one of the greatest world travelers to have ever lived.